The sun was beginning to sink behind the marshes of Charleston, throwing streaks of gold across the tall windows of the Golden Bay Country Club. The air shimmered with soft violin music and the hum of well-dressed guests clinking champagne flutes. Laughter floated through the hall like perfume, expensive, practiced, effortless. Anna Crawford stood just outside the grand entrance, her fingers tightening around the clutch in her hand. She had driven herself here alone. Her modest Lexus parked among a line of imported cars, so shiny they reflected the setting sun like mirrors. Inside, the ballroom glowed in amber light. Crystal chandeliers scattered reflections across the marble floor, and every table was dressed in ivory silk. Waiters glided between clusters of guests, their trays sparkling with crystal glasses. Anna adjusted the strap of her navy satin dress, the one she had bought for occasions like this, simple, elegant, just enough to blend in without drawing attention. She smiled at a few familiar faces, but the glances that returned felt polite, distant. A young attendant approached with a clipboard. "Name, please." "Anna Crawford," she answered quietly. The girl scanned the list, smiled, and handed her a small card. "Table 12, ma'am. Straight ahead to the right." Anna followed the directions, weaving through laughter and perfume. The card's number was printed in looping gold script. 12. She found it at the far end of the hall, near the service door. Each time the door swung open, the scent of roasted salmon and garlic butter rushed out, followed by the clatter of trays and the sharp voices of kitchen staff. Her chair shook every time someone passed behind her with a full tray. From here, the dance floor looked like another world. The stage shimmered beneath chandeliers, where Marissa, her younger sister, the bride, posed for photographs, a vision of silk and sparkle. People circled her, laughing, complimenting, admiring. Anna sat quietly, smoothing the napkin in her lap, pretending to check her phone. A waiter brushed past, nearly catching her shoulder with a tray of champagne. "Sorry, ma'am," he said without slowing. She nodded, smiling faintly. The noise of laughter and cutlery blurred into a single, distant hum. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter, that the seat number was meaningless. But every sound of metal clanging against porcelain seemed to hammer that small truth deeper. She wasn't meant to be seen tonight. At table 12, conversations rose and fell around her. Strangers discussing vacations, mortgages, engagements. No one asked who she was. Every so often, a guest would glance her way, polite curiosity flickering before moving on to brighter company. She looked toward the head table. Marissa was radiant, her hand entwined with her new husband's. Their parents sat nearby, smiling with pride. Anna caught her mother's eye for a moment, offered a soft smile. Carolyn smiled back, warm, fleeting, and turned away to greet another guest. The quartet's music swelled, drowning out the clatter of dishes. For a brief moment, Anna closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. It was beautiful, all of it, the lights, the music, the laughter, but beauty, she thought, didn't always include you. Sometimes it simply surrounded you like glass, clear, brilliant, and utterly unbreakable. As the music played on and the laughter of strangers filled the hall, Anna's thoughts slipped backward through the years like the slow turning of old film. The warmth of the ballroom faded into the dim glow of her parents' dining room, a long table set for four, her father's quiet chewing, her mother's sharp questions cutting through the clink of silverware. Robert Crawford had always been the kind of father who avoided storms. When tension brewed, he'd retreat behind the newspaper or murmur, "Let's not argue at dinner." Carolyn, his wife, filled the silence he left behind with opinions, most of them about her daughters. Marissa, the younger one, had been born with a smile that seemed to earn her applause. "That child could charm a banker out of his wallet," Robert would joke. And everyone laughed, everyone except Anna. Anna was steady, dependable, the one teachers trusted with extra work, the one who remembered birthdays and paid her own bills on time. "Our rock," Carolyn would say with a proud smile that somehow carried a sigh. "Anna will always be fine on her own." Those words had followed her through her 20s, a compliment disguised as a dismissal. Fine on her own, capable enough to be forgotten. Marissa knew how to use that. Her kindness came sugar-coated, with just enough sweetness to hide the sting. At family gatherings, she'd reach across the table, squeeze Anna's hand, and say things like, "I just wish you'd find someone already. You're so strong, but don't you ever get lonely?" Then she'd turn to their mother with a sympathetic pout. "I worry about her, Mom. She works so hard. There's more to life than independence." Carolyn would nod, eyes soft with maternal sorrow. "You'll understand one day, Anna. Love makes a woman whole." Anna remembered the last Thanksgiving before Marissa's engagement. Her sister had arrived in a red dress, flashing a diamond ring so bright it seemed to catch the candlelight from every angle. The whole dinner revolved around wedding plans, floral arrangements, and honeymoon destinations. When Anna tried to talk about a marketing project she'd led that quarter, no one seemed to hear. Later that night, in the kitchen, Carolyn had placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice soft but firm, "just don't make your sister's big night about you." That phrase clung to her now, echoing above the hum of the reception. "Don't make tonight about you." Anna blinked, pulling herself back to the present. Across the ballroom, her mother was laughing with relatives, looking perfectly at ease in a cream lace gown. Marissa stood beside her husband, the picture of Southern grace, hair styled in golden waves, smile practiced and flawless. Anna straightened her posture, drawing a slow breath. She reminded herself that she wasn't jealous, just tired of being written in the margins of her own life. Tonight, she told herself, she would stay invisible if that's what they expected. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet thought began to stir, faint and defiant. Invisibility isn't peace, it's erasure. That morning, as sunlight spilled through her kitchen window, Anna's phone buzzed on the counter. The screen flashed Marissa. For a brief moment, Anna considered letting it ring out, but she answered, out of habit, out of duty. "Hey, sis." Marissa's voice came bright and chirpy, the kind of tone reserved for social calls and subtle insults. "Just checking in before the big day. You're coming, right?" "Yes, Marissa. I wouldn't miss it." "Oh, good. I know how you hate crowds," Marissa said, her laughter light, practiced. "Anyway, I just wanted to remind you, don't drink too much tonight, okay? You know how champagne gets to you. And try not to stand by yourself too long. You always look so sad in photos. Just smile, even if you're tired." Anna let the silence breathe, just long enough for the sting to register. "I'll keep that in mind." "Perfect. See you tonight. Love you." The call ended with a click that felt more like a door closing than affection. By the time Anna arrived at Golden Bay Country Club that evening, the venue had transformed into something out of a magazine spread. White magnolias climbed the archway. Gold-rimmed candles flickered on every table. Waiters moved in perfect rhythm, their trays balancing flutes of champagne that sparkled beneath the soft light of chandeliers. A live quartet played Vivaldi somewhere near the terrace, the music sweet and deliberate. Anna adjusted the strap of her satin dress and walked through the crowd with a calm that she didn't quite feel. Each face she passed was radiant with celebration, people hugging, taking photos, laughing too loudly. A few guests nodded politely as she walked by, though none stopped to talk. "Anna Crawford." A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Christina Powell, Marissa's college friend, and one of the bridesmaids, wrapped in blush chiffon and a smirk. Christina." "Oh, Anna, you look nice," Christina said, eyes scanning her dress with faint surprise. "Follow me, I'll show you to your seat. Marissa wanted you somewhere comfortable." The words were honeyed, but Anna could hear the hollow space beneath them. Christina led her past the main tables, each closer to the stage, filled with laughter and conversation, to the far corner near the kitchen door. "Here we are," Christina said, gesturing with an exaggerated flourish. "Table 12. You'll have the best view of the servers." Anna smiled politely. "Thank you." At her table sat a group of Marissa's younger coworkers, chatting about dating apps and destination weddings. A woman beside her complained about her boyfriend's TikTok habits. Across the table, a cousin scrolled through photos, showing off her fiancé's new car. And then came Aunt Linda, silver curls, pearls, and an unfiltered tongue. "Anna, dear," she began, leaning in conspiratorially, "you're not getting any younger. You know, men your age start looking for women in their 20s. Don't wait too long, sweetheart. Biology is cruel." Anna forced a smile, pressing her napkin between her palms. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed it down with a sip of champagne that suddenly tasted flat. Around her, the music swelled and laughter grew louder. She sat perfectly still, back straight, expression calm, as if composure itself could save her. Somewhere across the room, Marissa's laughter rang out like crystal breaking, and Anna thought, quietly, the night had barely begun. By the time the dinner plates were cleared, the ballroom had turned into a theater of elegance. Laughter rose over the hum of conversation. Champagne flutes glittered in candlelight, and the band had shifted to soft jazz. Anna sat quietly at table 12, listening to the rhythm of other people's joy. She had learned long ago how to disappear gracefully, but the spotlight, it seemed, had other plans. Across the room, Marissa floated between guests like a swan on still water, her white dress shimmering under the chandeliers. Every movement seemed rehearsed, the way she laughed, tilted her head, placed her hand on her husband's arm as though to say, "This is mine." Then, suddenly, she turned, eyes locking on Anna. "Oh, there you are!" Marissa called, her voice bright enough to draw nearby heads. "Come with me for a second." Before Anna could respond, her sister had already taken her hand, manicured fingers curling like velvet claws. "You've been hiding all night," Marissa said through a smile. "Let's fix that." Anna barely had time to grab her clutch before she was pulled across the ballroom, past the main tables where the laughter was loudest. They stopped before a circle of well-dressed strangers, her new in-laws, gathered like an audience. Marissa's husband, Daniel Turner, a tall man with a polite but distant smile, stood at the center. "Everyone," Marissa announced, her voice ringing like crystal, "this is my sister, Anna Crawford, the overachiever of the family, marketing executive. Independent woman, you know the type. Too busy for love, but brilliant at spreadsheets." A ripple of laughter spread through the group, the kind that wasn't cruel enough to confront, but sharp enough to sting. Anna forced a small smile, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. "Oh, I admire that," said a woman in a pearl necklace. "Career women these days have it all, except, well, time for romance." Another woman leaned closer, her perfume thick as syrup. "You should come to our church, dear. Lots of nice, single men. We even have mixers on Fridays." Anna's stomach turned. She nodded politely. "That's kind of you." "Such a shame," an older man muttered, adjusting his cufflinks. "Pretty girl like you, working herself to death." The laughter grew softer, more awkward now, as though everyone could sense the cruelty, but no one wanted to name it. Marissa, radiant beside her husband, twirled her engagement ring with theatrical ease. "I keep telling her she'll find someone eventually," she said, turning to the group with mock sympathy. "She just doesn't prioritize it. Right, Anna." Anna's voice felt far away when it finally emerged. "Right. I guess I'm just busy living." Her sister's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. "That's my girl, always practical." A photographer appeared out of nowhere, camera flashing in his hands. "Let's get a family shot. Bride, groom, parents, and sister." As he positioned them, he asked lightly, "And where's your plus one, ma'am?" The air thinned. Anna opened her mouth, but no sound came. Marissa's eyes glittered with amusement, her smile too wide. "She came solo," Marissa said cheerfully. "That's our Anna, never needed anyone." The camera flashed, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Anna blinked through the white burst of light. Around her, the faces blurred into a single tableau of polite pity and thin smiles. The laughter resumed, delicate and distant, as if she were already forgotten. Inside, her thoughts moved with slow, cold precision. This isn't carelessness, she realized. It's choreography. Every gesture, every word, every smile was a line in Marissa's performance, a public exhibition of her own superiority. And Anna, as always, was the contrast, the cautionary tale, dressed in navy satin, standing just far enough from the spotlight to make the story shine. The night had deepened into its loudest, brightest hour. The band shifted from jazz to pop, the lights glowed warmer, and guests filled the dance floor with the giddy chaos of celebration. The MC's cheerful voice rang out through the microphone, slicing through the laughter. "All right, ladies, you know what time it is. It's bouquet toss time." The crowd cheered. Marissa stepped into the center of the ballroom, her wedding gown glimmering beneath the chandeliers. Her bridesmaids gathered around her, all flushed with champagne and excitement. Anna, still at table 12, felt her stomach twist. She glanced toward the exit, debating whether anyone would notice if she slipped away. Christina Powell spotted her first. "Anna, come on, you're single. You have to join," she called. Voice sweet, but sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, I think I'll pass," Anna said with a polite smile, half rising from her chair. But Christina was already making her way through the tables, laughing loudly enough to draw attention. "Don't be shy. We need more competition out there." Her manicured hand closed around Anna's wrist before she could protest. "Come on. It's tradition." Dozens of eyes followed them as Christina pulled her onto the dance floor. The polished surface gleamed under Anna's heels. She felt the heat of the lights, the weight of 100 glances. Around her, the younger women giggled, adjusting their skirts, whispering predictions. "Ready," the MC called out. "Our beautiful bride is about to decide who's next." Anna tried to blend into the back row, half hidden behind a bridesmaid's voluminous curls. But then Marissa turned her head ever so slightly. Her eyes found Anna in the crowd. For a second, their gazes locked. The smile that crossed Marissa's face wasn't sisterly. It was a smirk, soft and deliberate, carrying years of unspoken rivalry. 1, 2, 3. The bouquet arced through the air in a shower of petals and laughter, except it didn't arc toward Anna. Marissa flicked her wrist at the last second, sending the bouquet spinning in the opposite direction, landing neatly in the hands of a stranger near the edge of the crowd. The room erupted in cheers and whistles. Christina clapped dramatically. "Guess fate had other plans." Someone laughed behind Anna. "Not her lucky night." A wave of heat flushed through her face. She felt every pair of eyes, every smile that wasn't kind. The music swelled, drowning her heartbeat, but the laughter cut through like thin glass. Marissa turned, radiant in victory. "Oh, well," she said lightly, loud enough to carry. "Maybe next time, sis." Anna's throat tightened. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed a fallen petal from her skirt. Aunt Linda leaned over from her table, her voice thick with smug wisdom. "See, honey, even fate is telling you something." Anna didn't answer. She simply nodded, turning away before the tears could rise. She walked toward the side doors, the music echoing behind her like a language she no longer understood. The laughter faded into a dull roar, replaced by the soft thud of her heels on marble. Her fingers closed around her clutch. Enough, she thought. I've played my part. But just as she reached for the handle of the exit, a calm male voice spoke behind her, low, steady, cutting through the noise like a thread of silver. "Pretend you're with me." The words came softly, close enough that Anna felt the warmth of them brush the back of her neck. "Pretend you're with me." She froze. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined it. Another echo from the music or her own desperate wish for rescue. But when she turned, a man stood just behind her, tall, composed, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. He looked out of place among the Charleston glitter. His suit was charcoal gray, sharply tailored but without flash. His eyes steady. Curious. Belonged to someone used to watching more than speaking. "Excuse me." Anna managed, voice low. He extended a hand. "Ethan Cole. I'm Daniel's cousin, from New York." His tone was casual, unhurried, but his gaze held an unmistakable hint of purpose. I was at the bar," he continued, "when your sister told her friends you'd probably sneak out early like always. She said you can't handle being the only single woman in the room." Anna's chest tightened. She looked away, embarrassed, furious, and tired all at once. "She's not wrong," she murmured. "I was about to." "That's exactly what she's counting on." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Leaving gives her the ending she wants." Anna blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or cry. "And what do you suggest instead?" Ethan glanced toward the dance floor, then back at her. "Change the narrative." She hesitated, the words echoing in her mind like a dare. "By pretending what exactly?" He smiled, warm, understated. "That you're not alone." Something about his sincerity, his lack of pity, disarmed her. There was no flirtation in his tone, no condescension, just quiet conviction. She studied him for a long second, then gave the smallest nod. "All right," she said softly. "Let's give them a story." Without another word, he guided her back toward the ballroom. The hum of conversation swelled as they entered, heads already turning to watch. Ethan moved with quiet confidence, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair as they sat down together at table 12. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable except that it wasn't. Anna could feel the subtle shift ripple through the room like a current. A few nearby guests glanced their way, whispered something, and smiled knowingly. Ethan leaned closer. "Now we wait," he said, amusement flickering in his eyes. Gossip travels faster than champagne at these things. Anna let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "You're enjoying this," she accused gently. "Maybe a little," he admitted, "but only because she doesn't deserve to win." Across the ballroom, Marissa turned from a conversation, her gaze catching on them. Her expression faltered, just slightly, but it was enough. She nudged Christina, whispering. Christina looked over too, eyes narrowing. Ethan straightened, still calm. "Round one," he murmured. Anna felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. Not attraction, not yet, but something she hadn't felt all night. Safety. She reached for her glass, her hand brushing his as she did. The simple contact steadied her. For the first time that evening, she didn't feel invisible. The air seemed different now, less heavy, less cruel. Around them, the whispers continued to spread, weaving their quiet alliance into the night. Anna glanced at Ethan, half smiling. "You really think this will work?" He met her eyes. "It already has." It didn't take long for the whispers to reach Marissa from across the ballroom. She noticed how the energy had shifted. The same guests who once pitted Anna now glanced toward table 12 with curiosity. The sight of her older sister sitting beside Ethan Cole, chatting easily, was enough to freeze her smile mid-sentence. Marissa's laugh returned a moment later, louder, more forced. She excused herself from the group, adjusting her dress as she crossed the room. Her heels clicked against the marble like punctuation marks of irritation. "Anna!" she sang, her voice sweet and piercing all at once. "I didn't know you two had met." Anna looked up just as Ethan rose slightly from his chair, his posture calm, protective without being obvious. "We've known each other for a while," he said evenly, offering his hand. "Ethan Cole, Daniel's cousin." Marissa blinked, her smile tightening. "Really? I don't recall ever seeing you together before." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Old friends," he said simply. "Lost touch for a while." The simplicity of the answer was disarming. Marissa turned her gaze to Anna, searching her face for a clue. "Old friends," she repeated, her tone teetering between disbelief and amusement. "That's unexpected." Anna took a sip of her wine, the stem of the glass steady between her fingers. "Some things," she said softly, "are better kept private." The sentence hung in the air like a ripple. Marissa's smile faltered just enough to betray her confusion. For a heartbeat, she wasn't the perfect bride or the socialite hostess, just a woman whose script had suddenly been rewritten. "Well," Marissa said finally, recovering her tone, "I suppose that's lovely. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself." Ethan nodded politely, then turned back to Anna as though Marissa had already left. "You were telling me about your project in Charleston Harbor," he said, his voice smooth, perfectly natural. Anna caught on immediately. "Oh, right, the coastal branding campaign," she replied, her tone relaxed. It wasn't just small talk, it was theater, elegantly played. Marissa stood there, frozen between politeness and fury, watching the exchange unfold like a scene she hadn't been invited to direct. "Sounds fascinating," Ethan said, his smile faint but warm. "Maybe you'll let me read the proposal sometime." Anna smiled back. "If you promise to give honest feedback." "Always." Their conversation flowed easily, almost too easily. Each word between them built a wall, softly, deliberately, keeping Marissa on the outside. For once, Anna wasn't the shadow. She was the center of gravity, calm and radiant under the same lights that had once made her invisible. Marissa's nails tapped against her glass. The sound was small but sharp. "Well, I'll let you two catch up," she said finally, her voice sweetened again but stretched thin. "Of course," Ethan replied with effortless courtesy, not even looking up. As Marissa turned away, her eyes flicked toward Christina, who was standing near the bar. She beckoned her over with a discreet motion. The two women leaned close, whispering quickly, their smiles tightening like drawn bows. From table 12, Anna watched them briefly, recognizing that familiar choreography, the plotting, the need to reclaim control. She felt a quiet satisfaction bloom inside her. Ethan noticed the glance and said under his breath, "Let her wonder." Anna didn't reply, but her faint smile said everything. For the first time in years, it wasn't Marissa setting the stage. From that moment on, the rhythm of the evening began to shift, so subtly that no one could pinpoint when it happened. One moment, Anna was invisible, the next. People couldn't stop glancing toward table 12. Ethan had a way of commanding attention without demanding it. His voice carried easily through the laughter, low and smooth. His smile quiet but sure. When he spoke, people leaned in. When he laughed, it sounded genuine enough to make others turn and wonder what was so funny. And sitting beside him, her posture graceful, her smile soft, Anna seemed to belong to a world she had been denied all night. For the first time in hours, she laughed. Not the careful, polite kind she'd practiced through years of family gatherings, but a laugh that escaped her naturally, light and real. Ethan watched her with a faint smile, as if her laughter alone justified the small rebellion they had started. A few tables away, guests began whispering, "Is that Daniel's cousin? He came alone, didn't he? Who's she?" The tone had changed, from pity to curiosity, from judgment to intrigue. Ethan noticed the shifting glances, but ignored them with practiced ease. He poured her champagne, asked about her work, and listened, really listened. When she spoke about her campaigns, her ideas, the challenges she faced, his interest never wavered. It wasn't performative. It was respect, the simplest gift no one else at that wedding had thought to offer. Later, when the band slowed to a waltz, Ethan extended his hand toward her. "You've hidden long enough," he said softly. Anna hesitated. "I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he said with a grin. "That's why it'll look real." Under the dim glow of the chandeliers, they stepped onto the dance floor. Candlelight flickered across the mirrored walls, scattering tiny constellations around them. The quartet's melody moved like water, graceful and unhurried. Ethan's hand found the small of her back, steady and unintrusive. Around them, guests turned to watch. Marissa stood by the cake table, her expression frozen in polite disbelief. Her husband leaned close, murmuring something she didn't hear. Christina's laughter faltered mid-sentence. Ethan guided Anna through a simple turn, their movements perfectly in sync despite her nerves. "Your sister," he whispered with amusement. "Looks like she's about to explode." Anna smiled, a real one this time, small but fierce. "Good," she said. "Let her." The music swelled. For a moment, it felt as though the rest of the room had vanished. There were no whispers, no pitying glances, no kitchen doors banging behind her. Just the gentle rhythm of the waltz and the calm in Ethan's eyes. When the song ended, polite applause rippled through the crowd. Ethan bowed playfully and Anna laughed again. Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with something she hadn't felt in years, self-worth. She caught her reflection in the mirrored wall as they returned to their table. Her shoulders were straighter, her eyes brighter. The woman staring back at her wasn't the quiet afterthought of someone else's story. She was beginning to take up space again. The waltz had just faded into a round of applause when Marissa appeared again, her expression composed but her eyes burning beneath the facade. Daniel followed a step behind, his hand still holding a half-empty glass of champagne. The glow of the chandelier glinted off her earrings as she crossed the room, her heels striking the floor in precise rhythm. "Well, look at you too," she said brightly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "We're so happy Anna finally met someone." Anna's hand stiffened in Ethan's. She knew that tone, the sugary lilt that coated poison. The crowd nearby smiled politely, sensing tension but pretending not to. Ethan turned, unhurried, his calmness drawing attention before he even spoke. "Strange," he said lightly. "You didn't act that way earlier." The shift in the room was immediate. Conversations dimmed, forks paused midair. Marissa's smile froze, a fraction too wide. I didn't realize you two were serious." "We're not," Ethan said evenly. "We're just talking. But that didn't stop you from warning people she'd probably leave early again." His voice remained conversational, but every word landed like the quiet thud of a hammer. Marissa blinked rapidly, color rising in her cheeks. "Oh, I was just teasing," she said, laughing nervously. "You know how sisters are." Ethan nodded slightly. "I do. But what I heard wasn't teasing. It was deliberate." He looked around, meeting a few eyes before returning his gaze to Marissa. "You went out of your way to make sure everyone knew your sister came alone, to make sure she stayed small in a room that should have been about family." The silence was sharp now, broken only by the faint clinking of glasses. Marissa tried to recover, her voice pitching higher. "Ethan, you're misunderstanding," he smiled, cold but polite. "Maybe, but I don't think so. I've been to enough weddings to recognize when cruelty's being passed off as humor." Daniel shifted beside her, uncomfortable. A few guests exchanged glances. Even Carolyn and Robert, sitting near the front, looked uneasy. Marissa's laugh came again, thinner this time. "I'm sorry if something I said offended you. It wasn't meant that way." Anna said nothing, only watched her sister struggle to keep her balance beneath the weight of her own performance. She had no desire to rescue her now. Ethan leaned back, slightly, his tone softening, but not enough to release her. Then maybe tonight's a good time to rethink what you mean by family support. It was surgical, the way he dismantled her composure without raising his voice, without anger. Each word exposed her intent, layer by layer, until all that was left was the naked truth of her cruelty. Someone near the bar murmured, "Good for him," under their breath. Marissa's hand trembled as she reached for Daniel's arm. "Come on," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Let's go check on the cake." She turned sharply, dragging her husband with her, her perfect smile collapsing the moment her back was turned. The tension in the room hung for a beat longer before dissolving into scattered conversation. The music started again, softer this time. Ethan exhaled, the faintest ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "Well," he murmured to Anna, "I think that qualifies as round 2. Anna's throat felt tight, but not from humiliation this time. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He looked at her, steady and kind. She did. For the first time that night, Anna didn't feel small. She sat taller, the faint echo of applause returning somewhere deep inside her, silent but hers, a few minutes after the music resumed. Ethan leaned toward the nearest waiter, lowering his voice just enough for only Anna to hear. "Would you mind helping us move this table? The lighting here keeps reflecting off the service door. It's not great for photos." The waiter hesitated, glancing toward the ballroom's coordinator, but one nod from Ethan, confident, polite, assured, was all it took. Within moments, 2 staff members appeared, efficiently lifting and repositioning table 12 closer to the center of the room. Beneath the chandelier's golden glow, the shift was subtle, but the effect immediate. The once-forgotten corner was gone. Suddenly, Anna's table gleamed in full view of everyone. Conversations faltered as guests noticed. By the time the staff replaced the chairs and poured fresh champagne, the whispers had started again. Different this time, reverent instead of pitying. Anna sat perfectly still, her pulse quick but steady. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sure I did. Everyone deserves good lighting." His tone was teasing, but beneath it, she heard something else, an understanding of what that simple move meant. He had rewritten her place in the story. Within minutes, people began approaching. The same relatives who had avoided eye contact earlier now stopped to greet her, their smiles wide, their curiosity transparent. "Anna, you look radiant tonight," one woman gushed. "And Ethan, Daniel mentioned you work in finance. You must tell us more." Ethan handled them with gracious ease, answering just enough to charm, never boast. Each word, each glance reinforced the illusion, or perhaps the truth, that Anna belonged right there beside him. Even Aunt Linda appeared, clutching her glass of sherry. "Well," she said with a brittle laugh, "seems our Anna's finally found herself a fine gentleman. I always said it would happen when she least expected." Anna smiled politely. "You did say that," she replied, her voice even. Linda nodded, satisfied, completely unaware of how ridiculous she sounded. From across the room, Marissa stood frozen near the dessert table, her perfect posture stiff. She watched as guest after guest gravitated toward her sister, the same sister she'd tried to erase. Her husband murmured something to her, but she didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the scene unfolding at the center of her own reception. Ethan caught the look and leaned closer to Anna. "You see her." Anna's lips curved into the faintest smile. "She's realizing the crowd she built is a fickle one." He chuckled softly. "They always are." For the first time that night, Anna allowed herself to exhale. The humiliation had reversed, so completely it almost felt surreal. She was no longer the invisible guest at the wrong table. She was the one people noticed, the one they wanted to be near. And yet, beneath the satisfaction, something deeper stirred, a quiet sadness. She looked around at the flattering smiles, the sudden admiration. Anne thought how easily respect could be bought with appearance, how fragile it truly was. Ethan caught her expression, his voice low. "What is it?" She shook her head gently. "Just funny," she said. "How the same people who pitted me an hour ago now act like I've changed when I haven't." Ethan's eyes softened. Maybe they're the ones who needed to. Anna smiled again, but this time it wasn't for show. It was the smile of someone who finally understood her worth, didn't need a spotlight. The irony around her sparkled brighter than the chandelier. And for once, she didn't mind standing in the light. The lights dimmed again, and the MC's cheerful voice rose over the chatter. "Gentlemen, you know the drill. Time for the garter toss." Ethan groaned softly, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Do I have to?" Anna smiled. "You've already won enough attention for one night." But fate, or perhaps the crowd, had other plans. The groom's laughter echoed as he tossed the garter high into the air. It spun like a silver ribbon beneath the chandeliers and landed squarely in Ethan's hand. The guests erupted into cheers. "Oh, look who caught it!" someone shouted. "The cousin from New York." Marissa's voice followed, bright and brittle. "Tradition says he has to put it on whoever caught the bouquet." But the woman who had caught the bouquet earlier was nowhere to be seen. A murmur rippled through the crowd until a familiar, teasing voice rose near the DJ booth. "Then he'll just have to pick someone." All eyes turned toward Anna. Her heart stumbled. "Oh, no," she whispered, shaking her head, half laughing in disbelief. But Ethan was already moving, the garter dangling from his finger. "Rules are rules," he said lightly. The crowd parted as he approached her. The music softened, a slow jazz tune melting into the air. He knelt before her, not as part of the joke, not as performance, but with quiet grace. The room fell still. Anna's pulse roared in her ears as he gently slipped the garter up her ankle, stopping just below the hem of her dress. His touch was careful, almost reverent, his gaze steady on hers. For the first time that night, she didn't feel watched or mocked. She felt seen. When Ethan stood, the applause was thunderous. Marissa clapped too, though her smile barely held. Someone shouted for a photo, and flashes burst like fireworks. Ethan leaned closer, murmuring, "That should hold the crowd's attention for another hour." Anna laughed softly, her cheeks flushed. "You're enjoying this far too much." "Maybe," he said, eyes warm, "but I think you needed it." Later, when the band began to pack up and the crowd thinned, Ethan offered her his arm. "Come on, let me walk you out before your sister finds another reason to make a scene." Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the scent of salt and magnolia. The parking lot shimmered with reflections of string lights. Anna paused beside her car, reluctant to break the silence. "Thank you," she said, "for whatever tonight was." He smiled faintly. "It wasn't nothing, if that's what you're afraid to call it." She looked down, suddenly shy. "Why did you help me?" Ethan's voice was steady. "Because I saw you long before I spoke to you, and because no one deserves to be made small in their own family." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a business card. "Call me," he met her eyes, "not for revenge, but because you want to." He turned toward his car, leaving her standing in the soft glow of the parking lights. Anna looked down at the card in her hand, fingers tracing the embossed letters. Then, slowly, deliberately, she unlocked her phone. That night, before she even took off her heels, she called. Time passed quietly, the way it does when something good begins without fanfare. Ethan and Anna's connection outlasted the night, and the gossip that had followed it. What started as a single call turned into a rhythm of messages, visits, and long-distance weekends. He came to Charleston when he could. She flew to New York when the city felt too far away. Between them grew something steady, unhurried, built not on appearances but on mutual respect. A year later, the Golden Bay Country Club glowed again, this time under softer lights and smaller crowds. The staff had rearranged the ballroom for a private dinner. The air smelled faintly of roses and sea breeze. At the center of it all stood a single table, table 12, now covered in candles. When Anna walked in, her breath caught. Ethan was waiting there, wearing that same calm smile he'd had the night they met. "I thought we could give this table a better memory," he said. She laughed softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "You really do love poetic symmetry." "Maybe," he said, stepping closer, "but mostly I just love you." He knelt, producing a simple velvet box. "Anna Crawford," he said, his voice low and sincere, "will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. Around them, candlelight danced on polished glass, just as it had a year before. But now there was no humiliation, no pitying whispers, only quiet grace. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Of course. Yes." When they kissed, it wasn't dramatic. It was gentle, certain, the kind of ending that was really a beginning. News of their engagement spread through the family before the night was over. Marissa's congratulations came through a carefully worded text message. "I heard. Congratulations. You deserve to be happy." But the tone beneath it, envy and resignation, didn't escape Anna. At the next family gathering, Marissa's smile looked thinner, her marriage more brittle. The sparkle that once drew everyone to her had dimmed, replaced by something restless. Years later, when Anna and Ethan were settled in their small home overlooking the Charleston harbor, Marissa showed up at her door one rainy afternoon. Her eyes were puffy, her voice flat. "Daniel's leaving me," she said. "He met someone else." Anna didn't gloat. She didn't remind her sister of past cruelties or of the night she'd made her the family's entertainment. She simply opened the door wider. "Come in," she said softly. They sat together in silence for a long time, sipping tea while the rain hit the windows. Marissa cried quietly, her mask finally gone. "I used to think you wanted people to like you," she whispered, "but you just wanted peace." Anna looked at her and smiled faintly. "And I found it when I stopped needing their approval." In the years that followed, the sisters slowly rebuilt something fragile but real. Marissa learned humility, Anna learned forgiveness. Their lives diverged and intertwined again, this time without the constant competition that had defined their youth. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan recreated that same candlelit table in their kitchen. No audience, no chandeliers, just the soft glow of a few candles and a song playing low on the radio. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked, taking her hand. "Sometimes," Anna said, resting her head against his shoulder. "But not the way I used to. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just reminds me how far I've come." They danced slowly between the counters, barefoot, the scent of dinner still lingering in the air. The best revenge, Anna realized, had never been about proving her sister wrong or winning back the crowd's approval. It was the quiet victory of building a life defined by kindness, self-respect, and love, the kind of happiness that didn't need witnesses. As Ethan twirled her gently under the kitchen light, her laughter echoed through the house, soft and bright. It wasn't the sound of triumph. It was the sound of redemption,